Good evening, spiritual warriors. Welcome to another spiritual warriorship class where we read from, open for discussion of books by His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And we are presently in Spiritual Warrior 4. Now, last week we completed chapter in Spiritual Warrior 5, the necessity of enthusiasm. Those of you who have regular followers or keeping up with us pretty good, I'm wondering how your enthusiasm is or has been. I found the chapter, each time I do a chapter in exchange with you, I have to give attention to what's going on in my life. And I found it quite interesting. There were moments when I'm dealing with a program, setting up a program, and different things going on. And there were moments when I didn't feel very enthusiastic, although I knew something had to be done. And I kind of remembered reading that chapter. Now, I don't hold on to every detail, but I remembered thinking, where is my mind now that I'm not feeling enthusiastic? And interestingly, at one point it had to do with not doing what I had to do right or getting it right or something like that. And I said, oh no, you're not taking me there. And I came back to do the best you can do. And then you could feel a shift. It's really a shift in consciousness. So I'm still mindful of that chapter we finished. And I hope those of you out there are mindful, alert, and it has made a difference in your life and making it a more productive and worthwhile. So, since I finished that chapter, we need to start a new chapter, right? I call it a new adventure. And after some prayer and meditation and really asking Bhakti Tirtha Swami, where do I go next? Because he's given us so much. And I've sort of become more relaxed with what I call not being able to remember everything that I read and share with you. Because at first I thought I had to remember and go into details. But guess what? I was led to a chapter in Spiritual Warrior 4 that I remembered I approached some time ago, and then I ran away from it. The title of the chapter is Choosing Love Over Fear. And many of us, we're all walking around with some fear. But as I recall, I'm trying to recall, why didn't I go on? But maybe I think at that time I must have had more fear than I wanted to admit, or more fearful. But whatever it is, I'm ready to face it now, and hope you all are ready to face it with me. But before I go into it, I want to go back to one of the qualities of a spiritual warrior. Remember, we did 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior. Now, if you weren't with us, you can go back to November 2008, because November 2009 was 1 year we were doing the programs. And I remember I began by sharing with you and going through the 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior. That much I remember. And one of the qualities was fearlessness. So a spiritual warrior has the quality of fearlessness, and I think I studied that, but it did help me at times. But I just want to share a little something from that, because we're going to go into some details about fear in this chapter. So that's our new chapter. And while I'm announcing new chapter and the books that we're reading, I want to encourage you, or what I say, strongly suggest, encourage is better. If you do not have any spiritual warrior books, do try to begin getting them. As I've said, you can get it Krishna.com or at the publishers harinamapress.org, so that you can get in more detail the techniques, technologies, and really examine aspects of yourself that may need some cleaning up, refining, purifying. Let's put it that way. So what did he tell us in Spiritual Warrior 3 about fearlessness? He says, a spiritual warrior is naturally fearless. And it's interesting, when I read that, I thought, oh, maybe I need to go back and review the other qualities of a spiritual warrior. We went through quite a bit in the beginning with the spiritual warriorship. Maybe I need every now and then to remind you. But one of the battlefield of a spiritual warrior is consciousness. So we're dealing with our own consciousness and consciousness of others as we use the weapons of love and compassion. So a spiritual warrior is naturally fearless. Okay, spiritual warriors, you feel that? Fearlessness. What need is there to shuffle our feet when we are backed up by a supreme power? And that our essence of our spirituality, of knowing who we are, who God is, and our connection with Him. How can we become intimidated, he says, when our actual origin is divine? Our actual origin is divine. When you get that sense of moving towards the understanding of who you are as a spirit soul. We know the early premise, the first premise is you're not the body, you're spirit soul. And the more you can get that, and of course if you're having a little problem, I send people to Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2. Krishna himself breaks it down there, that spirit soul. So how can you be intimidated when your actual origin is divine? Now, when we realize these things, there is no reason to hold on to our various crutches, because there's no cause for insecurity. That's something to think about. No cause. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I'll start getting back into those 12 qualities. Spiritual Warrior 3. Fantastic. You can work with these qualities. You can really feel yourself growing and becoming, advancing spiritually. I put it that way. So let's see what he says about choosing love over fear. Because we also covered a lot on love. Going back to Spiritual Warrior 2, if you were with us. The first chapter was the School of Love. And that's where he tells us that the soul is made for love. So, and you're a spirit soul, so that love is there, and the ability to give it and choose to express it is there. So, it's been a lot we've covered. So he starts this chapter 2 with a quote from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 6, Text 5. And forgive me, I'm not going to struggle with the Sanskrit tonight. The translation is, the mind is the root cause of lust, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear. Now, weren't we dealing, those the enemies of the mind? Remember in our last chapter, Necessity of Enthusiasm, it was those enemies that were the obstacles if we weren't feeling enthusiastic about what we were doing. So it goes on, combine these constitute bondage to fruitive activity. What learned man would put faith in the mind? Huh? And we let that mind drive us. So what I did, I went to Vedabase and to see if there was a purport, because sometimes Prabhupada can be quite profound. He says in the purport for that particular verse, did you hear it as I read it? I did stop. It says that the mind is the root cause of lusts, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear. And all of these together constitute bondage to fruitive activity. And what learned man would put faith in the mind? You remember in Bhagavad Gita when Arjuna wanted to leave the battlefield, and he was so concerned about what would happen if he went to fight and would be killing men and leaving the women and all the, the argument he gave. Krishna, and remember what Krishna told him, you call yourself a learned man and you're talking like a fool. So it's really understanding that difference between spiritual and material. So the purport Prabhupada put out, he says that the mind is the original cause of material bondage. It is followed by many enemies, such as anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear. The best way to control the mind, he says, is to engage it always in Krishna consciousness. And then he quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam 9:4-18. And that's the chapter with the story of Ajamil. How he stayed in, kept his mind in Krishna consciousness by doing everything, thinking of Krishna, using his whole body, mind, to serve Krishna and remember Krishna. He used his legs to walk to the temple, his hands to clean the temple, his eyes to look at the deities, his ears to hear the Bhagavatam class. So we can use all of our senses to be Krishna conscious, because that's what it means. So he says, since the followers of the mind bring about material bondage, we should be very careful not to trust the mind. And again, going back to the 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior, the first one that we were given to find the way is controlling the senses and mastery of the mind. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami breaks it down and really gives us quite a bit. So he says that the culture of fear, which is quite powerful and almost all-encompassing, is actually sweeping the planet at this time. Fear is such a powerful ingredient in the material energy. As a matter of fact, the Vedic paradigm considers fear to be one of the major factors that maintains the material world. We have already, the author has already described 4 basic engagements that the living entity pursues instead of self-realization. And I'm sure if you think about that, you'll remember. What are those 4 basic that most of us pursue rather than seeking self-realization, getting to know who we are and who God is? Eating, sleeping, mating, and he calls it fearing and defending. Now, all species of life must eat and sleep in order to gain strength and rejuvenate the body. Mating is also a natural function necessary for the growth and development of the species. However, while the living entities pursue these activities, they constantly fear that such activities will cease, or the quality of eating, sleeping, mating will decrease. Consequently, they always have an underlying fear of the future. Now it's interesting, before we go further, I want to take you back to the chapter, if you recall, it's all right whether you do or not, in the same book, Spiritual Warrior 4, one of the chapters entitled Avoiding Excessive Anxiety. We went through that earlier. But one of the points that he starting to give us in this chapter is how to rescue our consciousness from the negative mentality of fear. And I'm just one. The first one he says is, do not fear the future. We should try to avoid any worry that revolves around fears of the future. As we live each day, we should simply do our very best today and let the future take care of itself. When we worry too excessively about the future, we often fail to take the necessary actions that will lead to an auspicious future. Because it's really what you do today that makes your future. In many ways, the future is an extension of the present, along with influences of the past. Unfortunately, we can turn into our own greatest enemy. Our own mind can create the exact situation we wish to avoid. Have you ever gone through something and something happened, you say, I knew that would happen. Why did you know? Because I could see it. I was thinking about it, and I just knew something like that would happen. And if somebody said, yeah, well, you caused it, then you get upset. You telling me that I caused this to happen is not his fault, her fault. No. Just what he's saying. Our own mind can create the exact situation we wish to avoid. And an unhealthy mental culture often blocks the divine power that can work through us. So when we worry about the future, we do not offer our best today. So think about that. That's very important. The next time you say, I knew that would happen, think about it, whatever it was, and think about how much time you had put into seeing that situation happen. And then you can even work with yourself to see how you could have thought differently, or maybe how next time you will think differently because you want a different situation. Mind. So he goes on in this chapter on choosing love over fear. The Vedic scriptures now also describe the specific types of miseries or fears that attack all living entities, regardless of race, tribe, gender, or place of residence. The basic miseries are known as Adi Atmika, Adi Daivika, and Adi Bhautika. Now, Adi Atmika refers to the attacks or fears created by one's own mind. Just spoke about that, didn't we? Now, the fears that result from the devas or demigods and the environment, such as hurricanes and tornadoes, earthquakes, droughts, or floods, and we're seeing them happening, aren't we, are known as Adi Devika. Now, some of these torments can attack us abruptly and even have a very devastating power that they take our lives. Now, due to the negative circumstances that we may have undergone in the past, we maintain a fear in the present and carry that into the future. The last type of fear in the present, the last type of fear we mentioned, you remember what it was? Adi Bhautika. That results from our interaction with other people and from the constant disappointment and disturbances that we experience through the process of socialization. And I'm sure that's not new to anybody, that type of misery. Now, unless people take tremendous shelter of the spiritual culture and repeatedly surcharge themselves spiritually, such fears will remain an integral part of your life. Unless you take tremendous amount of shelter of the spiritual culture and surcharge yourself spiritually, such fears will remain a part of your psyche. Furthermore, this Kali Yuga, ooh, and what is also called the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, as it's progressing, the influence of fear will also concomitantly increase. I find sometimes reading headlines or hearing newspaper people tell me, I read in the paper there, you know what happened there. All I can say really is Kali Yuga is in full force, and it's not anywhere near the end. So again, and usually that's why the way he puts it, we have to take shelter of spiritual culture and surcharge ourselves spiritually. Not only are we products of this fear, but our children and grandchildren must also grow up in this environment, which we help to maintain in our own way. To the extent that we fail to embrace love, we will simultaneously create and maintain the culture of fear. Eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing, along with the three miseries, are all a part of this illusory culture. The terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001 have escalated people's fears and anxiety since the devastation has exposed some of these illusions. And I think just based on what we've been hearing recently with the coming of that date again, September 11th, and what's going on, especially in New York City and here in Florida, it shows this statement has escalated people's fears and anxiety. It's a very true statement. And we might have, if I read this last week or 2 weeks ago, just read it, glossed over it. But we've had the experience, haven't we? We've heard it, we've seen it on the TV or on the computer and I guess YouTube or whatever, of what fear and anxiety will do to people and get them out in such a state to want to destroy and burn. So he tells us that these illusions that seem enduring and dependable can no longer offer the same security. Although some people feel that these attacks have changed the world, in another sense, our predicament has always been the same, because these three miseries, what did we say? Adhyatmika, Adhidevika, and Adhibhautika, have always harassed the world. Just what we said, the mind, the environment, and other people. So people have always focused their attention on eating, sleeping, mating, defending, fearing. But sometimes in different parts of the world, the cosmic facade covers the reality of the situation. Now, as we move into the 21st century, we will definitely see an increase in environmental fears. It's interesting, just reading that what came to my mind. Thankfully, here in Florida, we haven't had any hurricanes as yet. I don't think the season ends until October, November. So when the season comes, the headline goes up, X number of hurricanes expected, and then we get warnings of how to protect yourself during it and the whole thing. And then when we hear the news stories of this one, whatever name, what Earl was out there for a while, I forgot, this one blowing now, I don't know, what's the K? I don't know. Anyway, but this year so far we've gotten some showers or something, but nothing. But that's a fear, especially people who live close to the waters and down the furthest down south and all, because we're sort of inland here, but it can get rough here too. So that's a fear. So I got carried away. Oh, I was saying we hear about tempered medicine. You're just describing what's going on right now, and have so many things to fear. And in we hear about tampered medicine, mad cow disease, killer bees, serial killers, asbestos, terrorists, nuclear and chemical warfare, and you can probably name a few. Cancer, AIDS, and heart disease are taking many lives. And certain places are suffering from droughts, cyclone, hurricanes, and these floods in Pakistan have really, just recently taken many people. So there's even an increase in mental disturbances, such as the varieties of depression, anxieties, and mental illness. And the amount of violence and hostility is rapidly escalating. The terrorists are also causing extensive, exhaustive fear, especially due to the attacks on the World Trade Center, which claimed a massive number of lives. Now, since people must live amidst such hostility and violence, they constantly feel fearful due to the realities of the situation. Consequently, we need to have a complete internal revolution on this planet. We need to have a complete internal revolution on this planet. All over the world, people are waging all types of wars between individuals and between countries. We need spiritual soldiers who can counteract these negative forces. He states, for this reason, I am writing this series of books entitled Spiritual Warrior. People need to understand how this negative culture affects their families and environments and will gradually infiltrate the present human consciousness on this planet until it literally creates a different species. Even now, the negative propaganda that we constantly see and hear is altering our current state of existence because it is changing our priorities and even stimulating our hidden priorities. We need to strategize in order to wage peace instead of war. We should not simply withdraw, but we must form a strategy to protect ourselves and raise our consciousness in order to alleviate some of this extensive fear. This is the clarion call for spiritual warfare. You know, as I'm reading this, it's understanding, as I've been reading these books on openly and online, although I had read them before, how if we're serious, and I'm talking to myself too, in understanding what has been given to us, to come together and realize the seriousness, to bring about this change. But we have to start with our own consciousness. And as I found with reading his books, he puts it right in our face, what the obstacle is. And then he gives us techniques and technologies. And if we are studying this Vedic philosophy, if we are reading Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, or hearing Srila Prabhupada lectures, or even Bhakti Tirtha Swami's lectures, to reinforce, because the books, the sastras, we need them. We need the saints and sadhus. We need the spiritual master to help us. But we have to act on what we're getting. We have to practice. That's why when I came on, as I said, the last chapter we went through was the necessity of enthusiasm. As we're hearing it, are we mindful of our enthusiasm? Are we mindful of when we're not, and then remember what we were told as to why we're not? The enemies of the mind are putting up obstacles. The enemies are pointed out. Are you stopping to check, where am I right now? Am I angry about something? Has something happened? You see what I'm saying? This is for practical use, practical understanding, and application. Okay, how much do we still have time? Any questions, any comments, anyone out there? Who's out there, by the way?
David, Sunil, and Carol.
All right, David, Neil, and Carol are there?
David, Sunil.
Sunil,
and Carol.
From Belgium. Haribo, greetings. How can I help you?
Carol has a question. Isn't the ultimate solution to chant Hare Krishna, learn to love Krishna ourselves and preach to others?
How did you put that? Isn't the what?
Ultimate solution.
Yes, Carol, the ultimate solution is that if we're doing that, and we're to do that offenselessly, and we've been given the 10 offenses to avoid, are we chanting that purely? And usually we want to, but we're not, because of what? The mind. What the mind is bringing in. What the mind, as this is what he's showing us. This whole book is about the enemies of the mind and how they become obstacles. So you may not realize it, because if you're not chanting completely, focus on hearing the holy name, that mind is taking you. I used to sometimes come back and say, how did I get there? Because I would be chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, and I'm just going, and all of a sudden, one time I was 50 years back, wherever the scene was and what was going on. I said, my God, that was over 50 years ago. And the mind took me back there. And I thought I was chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So we have to be mindful. We have to be alert. We may not be unless someone like Bhakti Tirtha Swami comes and tells us how to be mindful and alert. And then what to do when that comes. He gives the technology, how to master that mind and tell it, oh no, I'm not paying any attention to you anymore. And then how to spiritually grasp. You see, Carol, it's a wonderful statement you made, and it's a wonderful objective to work towards, and we must keep chanting, no matter what the mind's bringing. We must continue to chant and make the effort to hear that holy name and to focus on it and not let the mind take over, because it does. So yes, that's the ultimate goal, and we have to stay at that. But this is to help us purify and cleanse and be able to focus by hearing these things that prevent that from happening. Okay, Carol? It's as full, spiritual life is full-time work, but it's exciting because you have a goal and an objective. And with these books and reading, you're hearing about the obstacles and how they're right in your face, and you may, just brush it aside. No, you got to work with it. Okay? Thank you for your question. Anybody else? No. Okay, let's go on with 3 types of fears. Yes.
Carol quoted Srila Prabhupada.
Yes.
Therefore, if you want peace at all, you will have to change your consciousness, both individually and collectively, by the simple process of chanting Hare Krishna. And then Carol wrote, change your consciousness into Krishna consciousness.
Yes. Yes. Right. And how do you become Krishna conscious, conscious of Krishna? In everything that you do, every word that you speak, every action that you take, every thought that you think. If you're in that space now, bless you and give me your blessings. What it is, that's why I give thanks to Srila Prabhupada to bring this teaching and philosophy to us, to help us get to that state of consciousness. It's about consciousness. But we have so much in our consciousness from past lives and from mindlessly functioning in this life until we got this, that we need help to clean up. It's like, you're brought to school, you haven't been to school, or you were in school in another country or somewhere, and they bring you here and they put you in the 5th grade or whatever. You have to learn how that 5th grade teacher is going to teach a subject you may have studied some time ago. It's not just because you're in the classroom, oh, I got it now. So yes, but that's why there are teachers and spiritual masters such as Bhakti Tirtha Swami. I'm so thankful to him, who has helped me clear up so much and become so mindful of what may be obstacles to reaching that pure state of Krishna consciousness. So it's something to work on every day. You ask yourself, how Krishna conscious am I today? Have I offered everything to Krishna? Have I done everything today to please Krishna? Have I served him? Have I served a devotee? Have I served my neighbor? So he's been giving us the questions. So yeah, those are wonderful statements, and I agree, and I'm saying keep chanting. Prabhupada says that. Prabhupada also said we're all pure devotees, and he told us the truth. Prabhupada also said what attracted me, you can see God face to face this lifetime. I heard that 20 years ago, and it attracted me. I've been endeavoring, striving. It hasn't happened yet, but that he said it, I know the possibility is there. And with a teacher like this helping me to right now choose love over fear and look at where the fears may come from and how my thinking can bring them on and make the effort to change, I know that may come. So yes, you are both right in your statement, but it's just how to purify and cleanse that consciousness that's with us from past lives. That, we went through a lot on karma in reading in Bhakti Tirtha Swami helping us to move ahead as spiritual warriors. So yeah, make that effort, but you're being given things here to become mindful of, to see how, if there's a blockage or an obstacle, and then how to move through it. Okay? Is that all right? Thank you for your questions and statements. He now goes into 3 types of fear. And what I'm going to do, I'll see how far I can go before our closing time, because I wish you all had the book. But anyway, I will not be here for 2 Fridays. Oh, where you going? What you going to do? I'm going to a Japa retreat next week. I leave early Saturday morning, and I'll come back, return October 3rd. And I'm excited about that, talking of trying to become Krishna conscious. This Japa retreat is called a 3rd level, and there's going to be 4 days of chanting 64 rounds. And I'm really looking forward to that. But what I'm telling you is I'm going to go as far as I can with this choosing love over fear, hopefully leaving you with enough to work on, be mindful of and observant, and enthusiastically work towards doing that. But what I did ask them at Krishna.com, if while those 2 weeks I'm away, if they can play past programs. So if you come on, you may still be hearing something that you hadn't heard before if you haven't been here. Okay? So let's see how far we can get with this section, 3 types of fears. Now we just spoke about that, but he's going to go a little more into detail. He says, as we reflect on our lives, we will see that at practically every hour of the day, our minds engage in some type of fearing. We constantly worry about the future according to our past experiences, along with our present circumstances. He said in a recent workshop, he asked the students to list their greatest fears from Adi Bhautika. Each person.
Can you say what that means, Adi Bhautika?
That's what is that from the Devas? No. Wait a minute. Adi Atmika is the mind. Adi Bhautika
from
is
other people.
No, Adi Bhautika is from other people, and Adi Daivika is from the demigod.
Right.
Got my girl here. Okay, Adi Bhautika, which is misery from other people, especially in social.
Other living entities.
other living entities. That's right, like flies and,
Insects. Yeah.
flies, butterflies, mosquitoes,
Or human beings.
or human beings. Because my mind went to human beings because I've been working on that one. But yeah, adibodhika results from interaction with other. It's interesting because he had put other people, but it's really other living entities, included people. Okay, have we got that? So he asked them to list their fears of the three categories. Now, each person had their own stock of fears. How about that? Stock of fears. Stemming from the mind, one student had a recurring fear that the Lord would force him into displeasing situations or force him to act against his own desire. He also feared that some unwanted calamity might happen in his life. He recognizes it as a fear in the mind and understands that sometimes he might just have to go through a distressing situation. Now that's interesting. He was aware that it's coming from the mind and that he may have to go through a distressing situation. Now, in this case, it's the fear of God's power and a fear that God will execute his own plan rather than the plan of the individual. And he fears that God's plan may cause him displeasure. Now, God's plan may cause you displeasure if you're just thinking about yourself and how you want it. And as the piece, what we read from the opening, that Srimad Bhagavatam verse where it states, is how can you have faith in the mind when you see what the root cause of those painful situations are? Now he said another student revealed that she has tremendous fear of making mistakes and embarrassing herself. I think most of us have that. I remember going through, sometimes, even now, especially if I'm thinking of giving a class or something, I want everything just right. She also fears that other people may not support or appreciate her actions. Several people felt fear of abandonment by those who they love. Fear of abandonment affects many people because although the people who we love the most can make us the happiest, we know that our closest associates can also hurt us the most. Try to remember the times in which you felt the most depressed, disappointed, or anxious. What caused such intense emotions? Usually, such feelings stem from the person we love the most. Our employee or associate can hurt us, but not the same degree as the person we care for. Most people. When we try to care for another person and have expectations of reciprocation, we will feel much more hurt when that reciprocation does not manifest. That aspect of having reciprocation, which is a natural, when you give, you want reciprocation, but that can be the most painful. Now, he says, fear stemming from the mind can also include an intense fear of failure because of how others will think of us and what it will mean in terms of our identity in the environment. Some fear how people will categorize them according to their low achievements. Now, another person may fear success because it might put them into a certain position that others may not appreciate and support. Fear. As a result, they may even lose their friendships with some people. The mind is so powerful that whatever thoughts we have on a regular basis will obviously determine how we speak and act. The mind is so powerful that whatever thoughts we have on a regular basis will obviously determine how we speak and act. So again, he's giving us an instruction here, again, of being mindful of what's going on. That we cannot allow that mind to run willy-nilly. And if we pick up something, remember the section we did on the inner dialogue. That was an interesting few classes we did on that. What are you talking to yourself? Because the mind, all it does is accept and reject. And if you're feeding it something and it figures that's what she wants, we go set up the situation so it can happen. And you say, well, how did Krishna let that happen? He's given us the free will. And if that's where your attention is, then that's what you want, and he lets you. But when you are endeavoring to master that mind and your attention is on a higher level, and as we talked about, wanting to be Krishna conscious, and you're doing the things that you know to be Krishna conscious, that's the reciprocation you'll get from Krishna. He'll help you. The mind, he says further, is so powerful with its creative function, but the same mind can be excessively vicious and destructive. So I'm going to finish here now with this section. After analyzing the fears in the mind, he says, I then requested the group to share their fears stemming from the environment. Although every fear has some type of connection with the mind, some fears have more specific causes. Some common responses included fear of death, heights, darkness, and thunder. Then we examine fears of other living entities. Such responses included a fear of thieves and doctors. One student felt fearful of his mother-in-law. Others felt fearful of bad association and negligent drivers on the road who might cause accidents. I'm surprised nobody mentioned they were afraid of snakes, because sometimes you ask me, what are you afraid of? Someone felt fearful for the children. One person expressed a deep fear of giving their heart and having it broken. Although many people have this type of fear, many do not, because they do not give their hearts. Therefore, they miss the risk and adventure of deep affectionate relationships. So we're going to end here. This is a fantastic chapter. And I'll be back in 2 weeks to continue. In case I forget, you tell me. We begin with hope and fear. But begin really seriously examining your fears and what category they're in. And those of you who brought up such wonderful points about being Krishna conscious, you can share that with others and begin to deepen and strengthen your Krishna consciousness, and maybe even read the story of Ambarish. Ambarish? Why do names leave me? Who increased his Krishna consciousness by using his whole mind, body, and everything to serve the Lord. Mm-hmm. If you have Bhagavatam, you can go to Canto 9, Chapter 4, Text 18, I believe. All right? So, any last questions, comments before we leave?
What was that canto?
Canto 9, Chapter 4, Text 18. Okay? Who's left? Everybody gone to bed?
Everybody's here. Everyone's still there.
Okay. No Bhuvan Mahan tonight, huh? No, okay. So again, who's there?
David, Carol, and Sunil.
Okay. David. Where's David from? Out west? I'm trying to keep this old mind active, because I know David's been there before. Is he going to tell me? David. Tampa. Okay. I welcome you all, and I bid you all a wonderful good night, and try to practice some of these principles that we've talked about and see how your life becomes more Krishna conscious. Thank you. Hare Krishna.